Welcome to Your Studio podcast, sharing strategies for studio owners. I'm Chantelle Bruinsma, here with Michelle Hunter, and together we're the CEOs of Studio Evolution, where for over a decade we've helped thousands of studio owners around the world, from dance, music, acting, art, yoga, and Pilates studios, transform their passion into thriving, profitable businesses. So if you're a studio owner, grab a cup of tea and settle in. You're in exactly the right place.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Your Studio podcast. It is Michelle Hunter here with my work wifey, Chantelle Bruinsma, and we've got a bit of a treat for you today. We have a recently graduated Studio Evolution member, a powerhouse Pilates studio owner from the ACT. Welcome, Jordana Martin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So excited to be here.
You know when you get a member come into your studio or a student come into the studio and you're like, oh, this is one to watch.
Mm-hmm.
This one was from the word go. Her studio was only 8 months old when you enrolled in Studio Evolution, Jordana. And it has been a huge journey watching you from when you started to now. You've actually successfully opened your second location in just a bit over 2 years. So how are you? You've done a lot. You've done a huge amount in a short amount of time. Do you need a nap?
So badly. I'm going really well. I think the road to hell is paved with the best intentions right now. It's all going really well. Some little hiccups here and there in relation to staffing and stuff like that, just the teething issues. But overall, I think it's been received really well, and it's growing rapidly. So that's exciting.
It's really exciting. So to kind of step back a little bit, you were in corporate and working the grind, and then you discovered Pilates. I remember you telling me the story that you did a forum where you're like, what is this? And it was it just changed your life. And do you just kind of maybe just paint us that picture of that transition and what inspired you to really open your own?
Gosh, it is going back a long time now. So, it'll be about 15 years ago now. I was in a corporate job, and I was never someone who was I played a bit of netball in high school, but I was never someone who was really like a gym goer or anything like that. I had no idea what I was doing. I don't like people to see me not knowing that I have not knowing what I'm doing. I really don't like to be perceived as incapable or incompetent. So that's like sometimes I guess shut me out of like starting things. But my friend was like, come to this thing. It's near our house. It's called Reformer. You start lying down. And I was like, all right.
Yes. I'm here.
Let's do that. And it was great because you start laying down, and so you kind of start moving everything, but you're like, well, I can't see anyone else. They can't see me. So there was kind of like, so I just kind of got into it. And then by the time we like start up and started doing other things, like I kind of forgotten about it because I kind of got into a bit of flow. I walked out of there and I was like, I'm obsessed with this. Like went straight to like the counter and was like, I need to sign up, take my money. And so I did that. I found out I was pregnant 5 weeks later after that. So then I did it all through my pregnancy. Yep. I did it right up until 38 weeks. And then I was back there as soon as the doctor said I could go back to exercise. And I was doing that for a couple of years. And then someone there kind of was like, have you ever thought about becoming an instructor? And I was like, oh, no, but like, absolutely yes. I said no, and then I went back to the next day, and I'm like, actually, I really want to be an instructor. So that kind of started that way, and I taught alongside my corporate career for a long time. In my head, I was like, one day I want to have a studio, but the time has to be right. I think. I don't know what the time needed to be, but at that moment I was like, I wasn't quite prepared to take that risk. And so I just kind of did that alongside of things. And then during COVID, and I was working, in the health space during COVID, all of these years, and during COVID, actually in pharmacy accreditation. And so that like blew up because like, how are we preparing these premises to do like vaccinations against COVID, but it was a lot of work. When some people kind of found things like decompressed for them, we were insane. And I kind of, towards the end of 2020, had just had a massive like burnout episode. I couldn't work for 8 weeks. And I was like, yeah, I think it's time for me to get out of corporate and open a business that doesn't open during pandemics. So it was like, I don't know.
Solid logic. Solid logic.
It was really backwards. But I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm lucky because I'm in the health space. I know when the vaccines are coming. So I did actually go like, I know that this is when they estimate that the Australian public is going to be vaccinated. Yes. And yes, and I also decided, I originally started with a home business and working in the studios, and I was like, I'll give myself a year to see if I like it before I invest in like a premises and all of that kind of thing. And I think within about 5 months of being out, I was like, I have to work for myself. Like I can't. Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of, that all happened, and I opened my studio then in October of 2022. Like I was in my group studio. And then here we are. Like
here we are.
There's a whole lot of other stuff. Like it was just me and one other team member who worked 3 hours a week when I first opened. I've got a team of 12 now. My hours have just increased a little bit with opening the new studio, so I'm teaching 16 hours a week, but considering I started with 30, that's
wow.
Yeah, I've still
two locations
down quite a lot. With 2 locations to only be doing 16 hours is not bad. So
it's not bad at all. Not bad at all. So one of the things that I have been so proud of with you was that I know that one of your big goals, your big kind of milestones you wanted to get to, was to replace your salary that you were earning in corporate through the studio, and you've got there. I mean, what would you say has been important in what you've prioritized and how you've made decisions that has allowed that to become real?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. I think even before I came into Studio Evolution, I was aware of the profit first methodology. Like that was something that I kind of come across. So I had already, I guess, structured the way that I was managing my finances in such a way that I was putting aside some money for profit and some money for myself first and foremost, and then doing everything else, which I know, like when people hear it, like, that sounds backwards, but I guess if you do it the way I believe it's supposed to be done, the idea is like you pay yourself first, you put your profit aside first, and if there's not enough left to do all the other things, then you got to make more money. You got to work out what levers you're pulling, and what you're going to do to bring in the money. So it's not a case of like, I'm not going to pay myself, I'll sacrifice myself at the altar of my studio, because that just breeds resentment. So there's never been a week since I opened my studio that I haven't paid myself, ever. There's never been 1 week.
Do you know, there's people listening to this. This is radical for many thinking. Studio owners. For many studio owners, what you're saying is like the equivalent of another language. Like it's philosophically so misaligned, because the feeling of obligation of all these other people and like what the experience I want for the students, and kind of like there is such a lack of correlation of your worth and your contribution. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And I think, like, to be fair, it wasn't like I never was like, oh, I'm going to pay myself, like, come hell or high water, like the salary I want is up here and that's what I'm going to hit. I paid myself, and I'm a sole trader, so obviously there is some flexibility in relation to how you manage pay in that situation, but I always allocated myself a percentage week to week. So that meant it fluctuated, but only in line with like how everything else in the business fluctuated. And, you know, some weeks might have been a little more feast and others a little more famine, especially when I first started.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just always made sure I was paying myself, because I didn't want to be in a position where I was resenting my business. Like I felt like it was a dream that I'd had. So I didn't really want to make that dream dirty.
It's a really beautiful honouring, actually, because that feeling of resenting the business is so toxic, and it's also really
I see it every day with a lot of studio
Yeah.
owners, like the resentment away from the family and then like the loss of opportunity financially. Like it's real. It's real. And you've decided up front to not allow that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally. And I think, you know, it's, I think I'm fortuitous insofar as like, obviously there's people out there that they're like, I can't, there's no way I can afford my life if I can't pay myself for 1 week. Like I've got long service leave paid out when I left my corporate job. So there was some like financial buffer there. And my husband is also like, has a good salary as well. So, you know, I did have space to to allow myself to be uncomfortable. And I think it's worth acknowledging that. But then at the same time, like I think that, you know, people sometimes that don't have the space to allow have the space still don't pay themselves. And yeah, I don't know. It's that whole idea of like, you know, burning the candle at both ends and all those kind of things. And how do we, and money, it doesn't solve all problems, but gosh, it solves a lot of them,
doesn't it?
In relation to like stress and all of those kind of things. And I think that by paying myself, then I also started to be like, well, if I'm paying myself, just like no problem, and I've still got money for the operating expenses, and I've still got money to pay the GST, and then I'm like, oh, I can afford to pay somebody else. Like I said, I had one team member doing 3 hours a week from the very start, which was not a lot, but that, you know, I started building my team out pretty quickly. So I opened on the 17th of October, and I had hired another staff member by the Christmas of 2022. And then I think by the April, I had a team of 6.
Wow.
So,
so
it went pretty quickly. And I think the other thing with that in relation to paying, and I definitely have had this conversation with people inside Studio Evolution, people that were umming and erring about like, is it the right time to put on a team member? And I mean, it's difficult because obviously you don't know exactly anybody else's circumstances, but like in my experience, it was always like, every time I added a team member, it was probably just a little bit before I felt super comfortable to add that team member. But you know, there's something woo about it when you kind of put it out into the world that you're like, I'm going to employ this person and I'll find the money. The money just kind of comes. Yeah. Which I don't know
Leap
why.
in the net appears.
Exactly. Leap in the net appears that's actually like the thing that I said when I left my corporate job. That was like, I'm going out into the world to like test this theory that I can do this thing. Yeah. And so I think that's always been, and so I think because I had that experience like several times over of like, oh, it's going to be uncomfortable to hire this person, but I'm going to do it. And it's like almost instantly like, you know, the extra money that went to their wages came in and a little bit more like every single time, which has also then put me in the position where I guess I have a little bit more trust in taking other risks in the business, like opening a second one when my studio is 2.5 years old, and that had been the end of the 5-year plan, not the end of the 2.5-year plan. But
right. Well, we went to, Jordana joined us in Horizon House in Bali last year for our retreat, and we're working on kind of, you know, 5-year game plans. You're like, I'm just going to condense the time frames here, but you were ready, you know, you were ready, and you knew your numbers, you knew the kind of stability you'd already created, the team was solid, like you were actively ready to step in towards it. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. It was very much something I did still think it would take. In my head, when I was in Bali last year, I was very much like, I was thinking like October this year, I would start in earnest to look for spaces that would be suitable to open a second business. But, you know, my neurodivergent hyperfocus, I also was immediately started obsessively looking at real estate listings, because I was like, well, how much is it per square meter for, like, you know, what locations, those kind of things.
And I remember you being so clear on it needed to have like a cafe, it needed to have like, you know, by the parking, you were like, your criteria for the convenience for your clients was like paramount.
Yeah, it's so, I don't know, some people might be like, that's such a random list of things, but
no, it's so great and intentional.
I think, part of it was like, in addition to like, I want free parking, I want there to be a supermarket, there needs to be some kind of like health, like pharmacy, it needed to be like a little hub, because I think it's harder to draw people to like if something's a destination in and of itself and there's nothing around it. Yeah, and I mean, with the new space, it's been great because the cafe next door to us, they actually approached me as soon as they heard I was opening, and they're like, oh, you want to do something. And so they do they do a discount for anyone who's just been to a class. They can go straight next door and grab a coffee or a meal. Yeah, so that's worked out really well. But I think the other thing, because I didn't just be like, there's got to be free parking, and that's just the best. There was more strategy in it, I must say. Checking on things like using the ABS statistics. What is the like? What's the median income for the area, and what how, like, does the average person living in the area own do they have a mortgage? Do they have school-age children, so they're less likely to be moving out of area anytime soon? So there was a lot of things that I thought about with my first one, and ergo, like, the second one, to be like, well, how can I make sure that I'm tapping into essentially like a group of people that are me.
Yes.
And that won't be moving out of the, like, how can I create relationships that should ideally mean that I'm signing up really long-term clients, because mostly people with children in school don't generally tend to move far because they want to avoid those disruptions to their kids. So it's kind of like, do they have a mortgage? Do they have high disposable income? Do they have kids in school? That's what makes up the most of the population in that area. Cool, that's a good place. And there's free parking, so let's open a studio there.
It's really, really strategic, and I think that it's probably the underlying kind of element that really creates success too for studios. Like, if that location you've chosen has, I mean, what we're seeing above and beyond is that in society today, that people are so exhausted and so stretched thin that they need the most convenient choice. So if your studio doesn't provide convenience and allow them to pick up, some sausages for dinner on the way home, whatever you're going to do, right, for the kids. Like, if you don't allow that ease, it's a one little barrier, and we just don't want any barriers to businesses. So I think it's an incredibly interesting conversation of, like, what is the appropriate strategy for venue selection that is going to set you up for success from the word go.
Yeah. And I think, if particularly, like, if your ideal client is yourself. Obviously, I think, with dance studios, it's a little bit different if they're working with children and stuff like that.
It's the younger self. It's the younger self.
But I think if it's someone like yourself, which is obviously something I think a lot of Pilates studio owners would probably be targeting, the demographic would often be themselves. Think about the things that you really don't want to do, like the things that are inconvenient and would be barriers to access for you, or like just be like, there's so many things, even like in the way, like, trying, like, preferencing weekly memberships that are just direct debited. So, like, they don't have to, like, pay an invoice. They don't have to think about it. It's just coming out, but it's coming out often. So they're having this little reminder of, I've paid for my Pilates, I should make my bookings, and all of those kind of things that are kind of like making, all the barriers that would stop me from doing something. I was like, get rid of those, like, buffer them out as best as possible. So.
So if you had a studio owner who was maybe in a stage where they were looking to start their studio, or maybe even kind of like they've got a studio but they're wanting to really, like, you've been a case study in fast growth, like, you've been a case study in that, I think it's fair to say. But if you're kind of like looking at your approach, what would you want studio owners to know? Like, what's the biggest thing to focus on, or the biggest thing to kind of like disregard or overcome? Like, what advice have you got?
I think, I don't know how to say this, like, eloquently. I think if it feels shit to you, it feels shit to your customers. So if it feels like a pain point in the back end, it's almost certainly feeling like a pain point on the front end. So for me, I think, and this was probably an advantage for me coming from like a background in accreditation, so being really into policies and procedures and systems and stuff like that was, but for me, I'm like, get your systems as tight as you can, as early as you can. Like, so if it's someone who's opening, if they haven't opened yet, I'd be like I opened with policies and procedures. I had one team member, like I could have just been like, just take the sign out when you open. But I was like, because I was like, I also thought to myself, once I open, I'm not going to have as much time to work on these things for a little while. So it was actually, in the weeks leading up to opening, like I developed those things because I was like, it will always be easier to go back and edit them. And I think now, like, and I mean, yes, the AI was around then. I was quite resistant to AI for a while. I still have some like ethical issues with it in relation to like resource demand. But I think you can actually, like, if you be realistic about your own resources and the demand on yourself, yes, then I would be like, that could be like something that took me days. Someone could actually be writing probably like an entire suite of policies and procedures, like in a day. Using AI. So I would definitely be like, don't be a martyr like I was. So, and I think, that'll be the biggest thing. And outsource as soon as you can, especially the things you don't want to do. Anything that's going to make you resentful to your business, or something that you're like, this just takes up so much time that I don't have. Like and again, yes, it will cost you money, but generally my experience has been like, if you put money into something, you're kind of signaling to the universe, I expect this to work out. Please return the favor. So,
it's bold. I really love you holding that resentment piece and honoring it.
Oh, so much. I think I'm a resentful person naturally. So,
well, I just think it's wise because I see a lot of resentment in studio owners who like have given decades of their life to this business and not received much. Like they're giving but not getting, and it's probably honestly a real negative trait that I see, and it's not from lack of love and devotion, but it's just the toll that these studios have kind of taken on the business owner. So it's real. But to consciously go, I get to make choices. I can allocate a percentage of my salary, even if that works out to be $75 a week this week. If that 1% that I can allocate to myself is that, then I'm going to do it. I think it's really wise to have boundaries in place of how you want to feel inside your own studio, inside your own business.
Yeah. And I think, like, to be clear, like, there are still times when I'm like maybe a little bit resentful to my studio, like, because we open at 6 o'clock in the morning. So when I get a text message at 5:23 in the morning, I'm sick, I can't come in. I'm like, all right, this is my emergency. Like there are those times when I'm like, but at the same time.
So do you have to be awake from like 5 a.m. in case you do?
I don't sleep anyway. No. I'm a fairly light sleeper, so I generally put my phone on do not disturb. So like emails and stuff coming through wouldn't get me, but all of my team's numbers can come through my do not disturb. So they know. And they do actually message straight to a team WhatsApp, and you'd be surprised how many of my team are awake at 5:23. So it's like, there's quite often someone who'll be like, I'll be there by 6. So
wow. What a team.
Yeah.
What a dream team.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of our team would be. I'm out.
So but it is one of those things, I think, because especially when that happens at the start of the day, like it's different if someone's like, oh, I'm calling in sick for my afternoon class, but at the start of the day, it's obviously you start your day with a lot of cortisol and a lot of like, I'm a bit frantic and I'm doing something I didn't plan for. And I tend to be like, if I'm working in early morning, I actually strategically build in what I call existing time, because I need time to exist before I go and be with people. So I actually like build like enough time into my morning process that I could literally sit on the couch for 10 minutes and just stare at the wall and be like,
lovely.
Yeah. And so, right. It's it. My family's not awake. Like nothing's happening. Like there's normally a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or something like that. But I just, whereas when those days happen when I get called in, then I don't have that. So I always I'm like, oh, I didn't get to exist this morning. So,
you didn't get to exist this morning. Oh. But like even like, you know, we've actually recently just kind of changed a little thing of how we're doing in Studio Evolution. Like Michelle, we've kind of had communication window for Michelle because like she was waking up at 6 a.m. to texts that would kind of flare the nervous system and go, Christ has got to kind of put this stuff out. And it's not a nice way to start the day, right, Michelle?
It's not. Yeah.
It's not. And even being strict on those boundaries as well. And even you said, you know, outsourcing, Jordana. We've got a saying in Studio Evolution, don't we? Who, not how.
Yes.
And just honouring that when you said, you know, you have the trust of when you hire, the money will follow. And also how much time you could have spent trying to do that task.
Yeah.
Eating days away and, you know, continually increasing your stress.
Yeah. And it's and I think something that I worked out like pretty early on, and this is because, you know, I've got a neurospicy brain, I cannot transition from being in the studio to doing strategic work. Like that cannot happen on the same day.
Chantelle's the same.
I'm exactly the same. If I talk to someone, my brain's gone.
Yeah. It's like, great. I'm working with porridge now. So that was something that I worked towards doing really quickly, was trying to consolidate.
Mm-hmm.
So the hours that I do teach are all
batched,
like together, rather than like, and I think this, like a studio owner's life is a little bit Swiss cheese anyway. Like I think that's how like we work. But really trying to consolidate the teaching hours so that I could have that time to focus on more strategic work. And, you know, and it's always easier to like fall into doing like the tick and flick stuff first. You know, there's a bit of dopamine in achieving something and getting it off your plate quickly. But I think, you know, over time I definitely was like, I don't need to be like the one that's updating the schedule if someone's going on holidays and stuff like that. So we put out all our cover requests into Trello, and you know, my admin picks those up and makes the updates in the system and stuff like that. So I just kind of loosely monitor to make sure that someone's actually said they will cover it. But I don't have to do all the back-endy bits. So I think the hardest thing for me to outsource was getting like my marketing stuff, which I've wanted off my plate for so long because it's definitely not my genius zone. I find it quite stressful to generate content. I want to consume it. I don't want to make it. But I also am very particular about, I think there's a lot of things out in the world about what people perceive Pilates to be, and then I'm kind of over here and I'm like, oh yeah, that, but with science. And when you ask someone who doesn't know anything about like the kind of the science behind movement and stuff like that, then you get a lot of this stuff over here. And I was like, so I did try a couple of times. I was like, oh, that's not my voice. That's not my tone. I wouldn't say that. That's not accurate. And so I was having to redo. But this is kind of circling back to the also using AI thing. I just, in the last few weeks, went to a session to learn how to build AI assistants. And so I built an AI social media bot.
Cool.
And a newsletter bot and a blog bot. And I did some training with them, and then I took them and I gave them to a marketing person, and I'm like, that's
you
me.
Use these now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Cool.
You make one. Yeah. So,
and are you happy with what it's creating?
Well, this month will actually be our first test. So yeah, but because for me, it's not so much the word generation; it's the visuals. Like I don't like doing the creative. I have no problem with making words, but yeah,
the image is got to be right too. Yeah,
exactly right. So that's but that's exciting. So there are ways and means, and I think that definitely like AI is also making more and more things possible to feel like it's still going to be aligned with your brand, but allow somebody else to do it.
Unbelievably. And again, the more it's that kind of upfront investment, the more we spend on the priming and kind of building the influence of our philosophy and our values and our tonality, then it just becomes faster and faster and faster. It's funny, like even like in my ChatGPT account, like a team member could do something and then I'll put it into mine and it just automatically just like ticks it in. Like, but it's kind of, again, like making that leverageable for the whole team.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I was like, oh, I wish I'd learned this sooner because like I was doing my profit plan, like my forecasting yesterday.
Oh, good
so
on
I
you.
was like, yes, I know. I was like, oh, this is my favourite pillar that you're in at the moment, the positive prosperity. So
true.
I'm like, it's sad not to be there. But I was like, I'm going to build a CFO. So I did that before I started.
I love that. Good on you.
Yes. So I don't know. So it's been good because I think the other thing with Studio Evolution, I suppose I should touch on that a little bit since we're here. I think there are a lot of things that, there's always this like emphasis on efficiency and like trying to smooth the crunchy bits and all of that kind of stuff. So, and some of these things I've learned like after finishing up at the end of last pillar. But I think it's set a really nice foundation for me as well. And I think like I'm also now kind of starting to be like, all right, I am going to go back through the projects now in my own time, but now with like more space, more studios, and see if there's things, well, not see if there is, there will be like, what can I tighten up and to start to focus on that? Because I think when you're in it and you're like, oh, I'm doing all these projects and like, it's a lot. So it's now coming through that second time with that lens of a bit more experience and a bit more spaciousness.
Mm-hmm.
To see.
I mean, I like to say another level, another devil, right? Like the projects, like I know you got your binders behind you, and it's the principles in that are will last you decades, right? But it's where you are right now in it that kind of, and like, org chart is always going to be revisited. Profit plan is always going to be revisited. You're probably going to be looking at your, roadmap and things like that. There's always going to be tweaking, but it's a good foundation for you to have. And you've just utterly thrived. And we cannot wait to go to Thailand with you in just a few weeks and eat chicken on a beach.
We're so excited.
We're so
oddly
excited.
specific that we're eating chicken. But
no,
okay.
I have a vision of like pad thai and like chicken. It's
chicken
gonna be
skewers.
great.
Chicken skewers, Jordana.
I'm just really and sunsets, and it's going to be magic. Can't wait.
Well,
can't wait.
I'm very excited for that. I'm also very excited for whatever it is that you've got coming. I know you've got something.
Jordana.
In the future. I know.
Jordana.
Publicly. No, that's why I'm like, I'm waiting in the wings for it.
I tell you what you were saying earlier about the whole accountability, I think it was an offline conversation, but yes, we will be launching our high tier kind of for our grad level program. You'll be receiving an invitation at Horizon House. I'll put it that way.
Yes, because I think, I do, that the accountability is certainly something. Actually, that's something I didn't touch on when you were like, what about if people are starting? I would say get coaching as early as possible. I think this is something I heard from, she's a podcaster and she's a fitness coach in the US and stuff like that. But I was listening to her podcast like when I first opened my business, and it kind of goes along the same lines of what I was talking about hiring staff before you feel quite ready and that kind of thing. And she was like, if you're never prepared to invest money into things that are supposed to help you become successful, you're already signaling to yourself that you expect to fail.
Oh.
So that's
wow.
Yeah. And I think I should credit her. She's Jill Fit is her podcast. But
Wow.
Yes, but I that really resonated for me because I think, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Like these investments for like good coaching, it's not small investments. Like I think that's something that needs to be acknowledged because I feel like it's like the money thing is obviously often a barrier for people of like, where am I going to find that money? And what if I don't like it and all that kind of thing. But I think, well, for starters for me, like when I saw the money for this, like my experience with Michelle, not this Michelle, although this Michelle is fabulous as well, but my experience with Michelle Shaper going through the like getting to like the kind of discovery call, I guess, like I had no hesitations, and this was a significant amount more than the coaching program that I was in before, which I left halfway through because I was like, this is not. But that spend was making me uncomfortable because I was like, I'm not getting what I need from it. Whereas for this, I like straight away after I met with Michelle, I was like, I have no hesitation to give my money to that because I know that I'm going to get what I want from it. And I did, and I have. Here I am on the podcast.
It's been beautiful to watch.
So great. And to think what you've done in 3 bloody years.
It's
Jordana.
crazy.
It's really exciting. It's really exciting because anything's possible for me. I know you've got beautiful visions of what's ahead and, stepping to third locations and things like that in time. But how you're thinking and how you're making decisions and how you are prioritizing yourself in amongst the happy chaos of expansion is just beautiful. And we're really bloody proud of you because what you've achieved is quite extraordinary in the rate that you have. And we're just cheering you on. Chicken skewer in hand. Chicken skewer.
We'll cheers with our skewers.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Well, thank you so much for being with us, friend. You are just a dream. And Michelle, what was your biggest kind of takeaway from this little chat?
Just the discipline from the beginning, like just Jordana paying herself and then putting the profit aside. As the studio grows, it just turned into cream on top. So I just really admire that discipline going through and honouring yourself from the beginning.
I really like the whole conversation around resentment and acknowledging you have choice and not allowing it to get to that point and saying, what have I got to do to keep and preserve my joy and my connection to this business to be healthy? That, I think, is really cool insight. Good times, good chats. Thanks, Jordana Han. We'll see you next time for our next episode of Your Studio Podcast. And if you would like to join us in Studio Evolution and go through the pillars and all the projects that Jordana has kind of indicated, head on over to studioevolution.com/apply and we can have a chat. Thanks, lovely one. See you next time. Bye. Love what you're hearing and want more? Make sure you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And the good news is that we've pulled together a bundle of our most popular resources, from marketing and retention to pricing and systems, all in one place for you to binge. Inside, you'll find videos, tools, and templates waiting for you. Everything you could need to start creating growth in your studio right now. All you got to do is visit studioevolution.com/start and dive on in.